Hi everybody, welcome back. You're still watching European Closing Bell. Next week, G8 leaders meet in Northern Ireland. Our next guest says that the international community must use the summit to address fundamental weaknesses in international economic governance. Dr. Alexander Mirtchev is the board director at the Atlantic Council, and he's with us in the studio. Hello, Dr. Mirtchev.
Very glad to be here.
So you think that the G8's agenda needs to be tightened up, really?
Oh, absolutely. It has been like this for a while, and usually the agenda is determined by the urgency of the moment, by the political momentum, rather than the political strategic considerations or the necessities, strategic necessities.
Yeah.
This time, for a change, we have a focus on the global growth, global stability, basically the global governance, which is the right agenda. And I think that once we have the agenda that is addressing the strategic issues, how far they're going to go is another question. But generally, they are really up to the point.
They have the agenda, and yet there are a lot of people that still aren't happy about it, and that's why we're seeing protests already. I mean, they already started yesterday.
It's always the case, and isn't it paradoxical that for once G8 is discussing the issues that exactly the protesters are raising, other than, of course, the conspiracy theories. These guys now want to tackle the global governance. Whether they want to do it in the right or wrong way remains to be seen, but they have the right questions asked. Last, for example, what to do with the multinationals. Obviously, we have a totally changed infrastructure of the global trade. Wherever, as the Prime Minister Cameron rightfully put it, you don't really understand where are the profit centers where they pay taxes. The tax avoidance. Obviously, in the times that we are facing now, the state is getting weaker and weaker to address the issues that are compelling and that the people expect. At the same time, the tax avoidance becomes prevalent. There is a lot of reasons why this is like that, but one of them is obviously going to be on the agenda. The transparency issue. That's exactly what the protesters want. Of course, at the end of the day, these transparency issues, who knows how they're going to be interpreted by the different parties involved. These are very complex negotiations, definitely a matter of national security for a lot of the participants, and a lot of them, definitely China or Russia, could have seen this call for transparency as do what I say, not what I do.
As always, right?
Exactly.
As always, yeah. Joel, I mean,
well, I was just wondering from a monetary policy perspective, the G7 and the G20, different bodies, but they've both given their tacit approval to what Japan are doing. Do you think South Korea's concerns will be heard? They've made some representation, I think, to some G8 members a couple of weeks ago that they're on the wrong side of what Japan are doing, specifically in the auto sector. Do you think their concerns will be heard?
I think that in general, we're now operating, allow me to get a little bit more complex here, in a paradigm that has been defined by the Western world during different times. And a lot of emerging players, they could not be satisfied or feel comfortable within the set of issues in the way they're tackled within this framework. So the call of the South Korea is probably one of the calls that has been heard. Actually, across the board, you have a great level of frustration for all the participants in the process that somehow they're not part of these arrangements.
Dr. Mirtchev, thank you very much. Dr. Alexander Mirtchev, board director at the Atlantic Council. Also, thank you to you, Joel Stainton from SEB Futures. But before we go, and listen to this, an update on one of the main stories that we've been following this week. The former CIA employee who leaked information on the U.S. government's PRISM surveillance program has vowed to fight any attempts to extradite him from Hong Kong. Speaking to the South China Morning Post, Edward Snowden said that he was, quote, neither a traitor nor a hero, and he claimed not to be hiding from justice. And an unexpected side effect of that story, sales of George Orwell's classic novel 1984, which explored the themes of an overarching government surveillance and public control system, have surged by, get this, almost 10,000% on Amazon this week. 10,000%, simply because of this NSA story. It's insane. You can get the full story on CNBC.com, so head online and you can find it right on there. So thank you very much to you both once again. Pleasure having you here in the studio. That's it for European Closing Bell. We'll hand you back to my colleagues stateside. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye-bye.